like, I feel like making a slideshow. So I just got up and I pulled up a video on YouTube and I worked on a slideshow. The link, oh, let me put the link. I'll put the link to the actual blog post in the chat a little bit later. But this is the final product. This one, I gotta move this. Anyway, this is the slideshow. There are 7 slides, and it uses a combination of HTML, which comes from just the text in the boilerplate and the actual images for the most part. The CSS comes from the stylization of the text box and like the size of the image. Like the HTML says, here's the image. The CSS says, this is how it's styled. And also the buttons. And the JavaScript comes from the animations for how long it takes for things to load in and out. I uploaded this to my GitHub, and then I went on Netlify and just kind of dragged it over so it can be hosted like this. And speaking of the buttons, they're supposed to like have one of those little animations when I transition over, but I just kind of got tired. I'm like, you know what? The fact that it works is good enough for me, so we're just gonna show. And wait, why didn't I show you the animation? Sarah, see? The picture fades in, and then like the box comes out on the left, and the code in the original video has period. I'm gonna say I had to write it down. It's period button space button hashtag previous and period button space button hashtag next, so it can actually move the pictures left and right like this. But for some reason, the code he had in the video, it didn't work for me, so the buttons remained unstylized and they were just kind of at the bottom of the page. They weren't even on the image because I hadn't put the image quite right yet. You'll see that in a little bit. So I had to remove the first period button, and it worked. I'm not really sure why it worked. And since I'm still getting used to classes and divs, I think one of those was not in my HTML, and so it didn't have anything to actually reference. So I'll have to go back to the drawing board and make that. And see, these are my favorite ones to make here. So I picked my 3 favorite villagers in my town, and here's the fun fact. They actually have birthdays. I didn't notice until like 2 months ago, and this is the one that shares my birthday, so I had to go get them. And what I didn't realize before is that the pictures, it has to be a certain size. I just made all of these and I didn't consider the size of the image. For the best look, they have to be around 769 pixels by 1600 pixels for the viewport, and most of mine were a lot smaller. But this one was pretty easy to edit. If you see over here to the right where this giant red rectangle is, I just had to lengthen it a little bit more and then just fill in with the red. Because I use paint.net, which is like Photoshop, but free. And it has layers, and you're going to see exactly how that kind of messes up in another thing. And this one was a little easier because if you kind of notice the box over here to the left, it's transparent a little bit. I think it's like 70% opacity. And this shirt over here was stuck behind it. It wouldn't look bad, but I didn't want it to be stuck like that, so I just dragged it up. And this one is more conducive to actually changing in the viewport. The other one's not. I'm not sure if you can actually see me change it here, but this one is actually more conducive to changing than the other ones are. And this next one is the one that really kind of messed me up, because if you look at the background here, the pink, the purple, the green, and the lighter blue, like I said before, this uses paint.net, and it has layers. And when I had to make the image a little bigger, like on the right side, I couldn't just shove a rectangle in there. I actually had to take this star shape and extend it out more, but otherwise it would look bad. And the layers just got so terrible that I just had to remake the entire thing. Where's my thing? And once again, all these came from, I hope you don't see my email text box over there, but all of these came from my village because the Nintendo Switch has the actual screenshot capability, and it has, this game in particular has an in-game editor, and if you look at this tree over here by this house, you can actually see the filters on there, and we're going to see another one. This is another one of the filters. Fun fact, I have actually redone this all because there's kind of nothing else to do in the game at this point except remake your island 500 times. And so that is just about it. There's a link to my LinkedIn and the blog, and if you actually have the game and a Switch, you can visit my dream address, which I updated about yesterday. And so the biggest challenges for me were, when I made this initially, there's actually a demo video on my blog post that I'll share about the version 1.0 where I had some different images. For some reason, the images weren't big enough. And I was like, why aren't they big enough? And then I had to go my CSS and check, and I had width height as VH and VW, and that's how it didn't fit. So I just had to say, hey, make the heights the actual size of the viewport screen so that if you shrink it or make it bigger, it's just all going to fit. And I wanted to put these links in the first slide, and for some reason, when I did that, it didn't work, and I'm not super sure why. And I've been working in Figma recently, which I think is like Webflow, but it's a little easier for me to understand. So I think I might just go remake this in Figma and see what I can do with it. I'd make it so that the text box would only change the contents and not reload each time I change the slide. And that is honestly about it. Stop there.
Well, Morgan, I really like your presentation. I like it because it shows people that when you're